So having covered off the dashboard and general overview there, the next area to look at is going to be the Accounts tab in Xero, and specifically for this video we'll look at the banking area. So once again I'm going to start off, as I will in all my videos, just on the dashboard, as this is the main area that you will come into Xero through. And I'm just going to go up to my Accounts tab at the top here, and as I mentioned we're going to look specifically at bank accounts here. So my bank account screen is now loaded up. You'll notice this is the same screen that we saw from the dashboard as and when we went into Manage Bank Accounts. So there's a few things I can do from here. Starting off, I can add a bank account into Xero. Now I can add a traditional bank account, I can add a credit card, or I can also add a PayPal account if I receive money that way. Clicking on one of those items will give you an option to enter the bank name, BSB and account number, and any information for an ABA file if you use those. It's important to note for the BSB and account number and bank name, they will have to be legitimate and exactly in the way that your statement arrives in order to present the bank feeds. I've also got an option here to transfer money. That's purely used for internal transfers, so maybe I've sent some money from my everyday account across to my savings account. I can record that in here. Finally, there's an option for bank rules. So bank rules are used for account reconciliation so that you don't have to enter the same amount of information every time. So for example, if you regularly go to a particular petrol station and you always buy from there and it's always going to be coded to your fuel account, you can set a rule up so that you don't have to enter it every single time. And I'll show you that in a moment. We've also got a Manage Account tab here. This is the same tab options that we get by clicking on Manage Account in the dashboard. It's just another way to get to the same area. We've also got the Show Account on dashboard and the Order on dashboard that I mentioned in the previous video. And finally, we've got the Reconcile area here as well. So I'm just going to go into bank rules first and just show you a brief overview of the bank rules, and then we'll go back and reconcile some items. So you can have spend money or receive money rules. It's important to recognize the difference here because you may have the same supplier customer name, but you'll have different rules based on whether you spend or receive money there. For example, here I may have 7-Eleven. If I spend money at a 7-Eleven, possibly it goes out to sundry expenses or cafeteria supplies. However, if I receive money from 7-Eleven, it goes to a sales account because of work I've done for them. So please make sure when you're adding a bank rule you check which one you want to put it under. So let's say, for example, here I want to spend money rule. I'll just drop this option down here, down and pick. So now I get 6 or 7 different options here for how I want to set this spend rule up. So first of all, when money is spent on the bank statement and it matches conditions. So here you can pick whether you want to match all of your conditions or any of your conditions. This is really important. So for example here, I might say that when I spend money and the pay equals Apple Store, then I want to set some rules. But potentially I've got Apple Store and I've also got Apple Online, and possibly I might also have iTunes, for example. So I want the same rule based on having spent money at either of these options. As it is currently with all matching, none of my transactions are ever going to match this. It's really important to note this. I will never have a transaction that has a payee equaling 3 different lines. So in this example, I'd need to pick that I need it to match any of those. So that means if I get a transaction that comes in with Apple Store or Apple Online or iTunes, it's going to go into the same rule. So here then I'm going to say that the contact will be the payee. So whoever the payee is in the transaction when it comes through, they'll be made the contact. If I know there's going to be fixed value items, I can allocate them here. So for example, if I always buy something at Apple Online and it's $1.99, I can allocate that. Or I can just say place a certain percentage to a certain account. So in this case here, I'm going to say if I buy something from the Apple Store or online or iTunes, give it a description of Apple purchase, and I'm going to put it into an appropriate account here. Potentially I've got a travel and or telephone and internet account. I've got a tax rate in here as well. This defaults to the tax rate that you've set on your chart of accounts, but you can change it if you need to. And I can set a percentage. So in this case, 100% of the transaction is going to go into telephone and internet, but you can split that out if you wanted to. The reference for the transaction is going to come from the reference that the payee has come in on, and it's going to run on all of my bank accounts, or you could set it here to just run on certain ones. So for example here, I'm going to give the rule a title, so Apple rule, and this will then come through on every single one. So if I save this one now, I have my 7-Eleven spend money rule and I have my Apple rule as well. So now if I was to go into my bank reconciliation screen and I have anything spent at Apple Retail, Apple Store or iTunes, it will automatically have learnt all of these rules. One point of note here is to not be too loose with your rules. I have seen some clients in the past have set a rule saying if I spend money at a Shell petrol garage, put it to a fuel account, and then they've been called out because a staff member has gone into the Shell garage but has bought something from the store that's not fuel. So please be aware of things like that as well. So having set these bank rules up, I'm just going to go back by going accounts and then bank accounts. I could also click on this link here as well and it would take me to the same area. And from here I'm going to go in and I'm going to reconcile my items now. So once again in here you'll notice that I've got this green Getting Started help guide. This help guide in this particular case will actually go over what I'm going to show you in this video here, so it is a useful one to have a look at, but I'm going to hide it away. So in here my bank lines have started to come in and therefore they've started matching in certain cases. So because I've loaded my reconciliation area up, I've loaded onto this first tab. So it's important to note in Xero that if you receive money through your bank feeds and it matches on one of certain areas, then it will automatically almost pre-reconcile for you. So if it matches an amount or a transaction date, transaction reference, apologies, or a payee, then it will automatically try and match for you. So you can see in this case on the right here, I've got a transaction in Xero for $6,107.50 for Ridgeway University, and it's matched exactly that transaction that's on my bank statement line. So in this case, I can OK this. That will reconcile the transaction and it will also mark as paid that bill or invoice. I'll repeat this with some other ones that are down here as well. So continuing down, we've now got this bank statement line here for Smart Agency. There's been $4,500 spent and there's been no match here. So because there's nothing come up in green, I can now use these tags, or tabs, apologies. I can use these tabs to decide what I want to do. So I can either try and find the transaction, possibly we build them in two separate invoices, possibly they've paid part of an invoice. If I know that I haven't yet put it in because maybe it was just a sundry expense, I can type a supplier or customer name in here. I can type an account that I want to code to and a description. And in this case, it will create the invoice or bill and reconcile it. I can also perform a bank transfer if this was a transfer. Or finally, I can put a discussion point in here and then potentially my accountant, when they log on, they will see this discussion. So an example of this is the one below. We've got a discussion tab and I've said that this is for an old invoice. I don't quite understand where I need to code it to. So in this case here, I'm going to find a match. So now I get a list of all of my transactions that are outstanding. I can use this right-hand option here to narrow these down. So I'm going to search for Smart, as I know this came from Smart Agency. So in this particular case, I found two invoices in here. These two invoices actually match up to the payment. So in this case, we billed the customer twice, 1 month after the other, and they've decided to pay it in total. So if I just tick both these items here, we now get nice green in all the areas to show me everything is reconciled in. And I can now click reconcile at the bottom, and those two transactions will match back to that one bill. One other point of note here then is the rules. So if you remember previously we had a 7-Eleven rule. So because we've spent money at 7-Eleven just here, it's automatically gone ahead and applied exactly the rule that we wanted. Same as my case in point earlier about the fuel station, where possibly we didn't buy fuel. You can set to override here and not apply the rule, but in this case I'm going to go ahead and apply it. So the only other part so far that I haven't referenced is going to be a split payment. So in a particular case where maybe a customer's paid you for a deposit or similar. So I'm going to have a look at this Jacaranda Maple Systems here. They've paid me $2,000, but nothing's been matched. So I'll click in here to open this up and have a look. And potentially this Jacaranda invoice has been paid by DIISR. So I know that's the company that's paid that the invoice was to. And just here we can note, so the total invoice amount is $3,850. So in this case, if I click on the invoice, we can see here my subtotal is $3,850, but I've only received $2,000, and it's warning me that it's out, not allowing me to reconcile. So what I would need to do in this case is just up on this top line, I'd need to split the payment. And I can put in the part payment, so in this case it's $2,000, and then everything goes green to reconcile. So in this case it's going to create a payment for $2,000, and it's going to leave $1,850 outstanding on the invoice to be paid. So I'm just going to click reconcile and knock that one away. So that's most of the reconcile screen covered off. Your other tabs on here don't tend to be used as much by general users of the system. They're more for bookkeepers or accountants. Cash coding is where you can reconcile accounts on a line-by-line basis. So this is more like your traditional Mile or QuickBooks reconciliation. Personally, I'm not a fan of this, as I think it takes away one of the main benefits, being bank feeds in Xero, but it's there to use if you wish. Bank statements will show you all the statements that have come in to your bank account. So as you get your bank feeds nightly, you can see them all in here. You can click on any particular line to see the transactions that came in, and you can tell by the little status tags here whether a statement has been fully reconciled or not. Finally, you have account transactions. So account transactions shows all of those items that you have reconciled. So for example, here we can see my part payment to DIISR that I just made. We can see my 7-Eleven and a few others as well. If you do need to unreconcile something, for example, let's say these top two I've reconciled to the wrong account, you can click them and then click remove and redo, but please be sure that you're aware of the impact that has on your accounting. So that's covered off most of our bank accounts area for now. We've gone through reconciliation, we've gone through bank account setup, and in the next video we'll move on to sales and then purchases.